When my mentor stole my invention and shattered my career, I disappeared without a sound. A decade later, I returned with a calm smile, a new name and a plan that would make him beg for silence. The world didn't end with an explosion. It ended with applause. They clapped for him, Daniel Mercer, as he accepted the award that should have had my name engraved on it. My invention, my 10 years of research, my life's work turned into his stepping stone. And I just sat there in the audience, frozen, my palms raw from clenching them too long. I should have stood up. I should have screamed. But instead, I swallowed it. Every cheer, every lie, every drop of bile rising in my throat. That night, my voice died. The award was for the Lyra algorithm, a medical AI model I'd created to predict patient relapses. Daniel had been my mentor, my closest ally. He knew every late-night code line I wrote, every struggle, every secret. He also knew I'd never survive public humiliation. He counted on that. When the plagiarism report came out, I wasn't the victim, it was me they accused. She copied internal company data, they said. She's unstable. Daniel made sure of it. The board believed him. HR escorted me out like a criminal. I remember the sterile scent of the office hallway, my badge clipped from my shirt, my reflection in the glass door hollow, blinking too fast. That was the last day I spoke. Literally. The psychologist called it conversion aphonia, psychological trauma so deep, my voice refused to work. My words locked themselves away. For months, I tried to speak. Only whispers came out like ghosts escaping. So I stopped trying. The world forgot about me. My friends stopped calling. My mother told relatives I'd gone quiet. Daniel became a public hero, the genius saving lives with my code. He even used the same tagline I'd written on a napkin once, giving machines a conscience. I watched from my tiny apartment's cracked window as his face appeared on magazines. Each headline cut deeper, but I learned to live inside the silence. Silence is heavy, but silence listens, and silence remembers. In those quiet years, I started studying him. Not out of obsession, at least, that's what I told myself, but out of necessity. Every interview, every talk, every minor business acquisition, I tracked them all. My apartment wall became a map of his life. I noticed something strange. Every success he claimed had someone else's fingerprints beneath it. A researcher, a startup, a junior developer, each vanished after crossing paths with him. Daniel didn't just steal from me. He harvested people. That realization was the moment I stopped being a victim. 10 years passed like a held breath. Then, one rainy afternoon, I saw it, a news alert about his company launching Lyrax, a revolutionary upgrade to the system he stole. And that's when the silence finally broke, not with a sound, but with a plan. I stood before the mirror, traced the faint scar on my neck from an old surgery, and whispered for the first time in a decade. He took my voice. I'll take his empire. My voice was faint, trembling, but it was there. And so was I. On my desk sat a small, tarnished key. It was from the research lab where it all began, a place Daniel thought I'd never enter again. I'd kept it like a relic, a reminder. Now, it became my callback symbol. The key to my past. The key to his downfall. That night, I packed a single bag. My old notebooks, a flash drive, and that key. I left the apartment without leaving a trace. My silence had been my prison. Now it would be my disguise. Because Daniel Mercer had forgotten what I sounded like. He wouldn't recognize my voice or the woman who would destroy him with it. The key turned smoother than I remembered. And inside the lab, someone had already been there. The lab smelled the same. Metal, ozone, faint bleach, the scent of betrayal preserved in time. I stood in the doorway, rainwater dripping from my hair, watching dust dance in the security lights. But something was wrong. The lights weren't supposed to be on. Someone else was here. Footsteps echoed. I ducked behind a server rack, heart pounding. The footsteps stopped, then turned toward the exit. I caught a glimpse of him, a young technician, maybe 25, swiping a badge across the old system. He looked nervous. When he left, I checked the logs. The access card? Daniel Mercer's. So he still came here. Or someone was using his credentials. Either way, that meant one thing: the past wasn't buried. I spent the next week inside the building at night, scanning old hard drives, collecting backups, piecing together fragments of data that proved Lyra's real origin. My origin. Each night, I left before dawn, vanishing like a ghost. But ghosts leave fingerprints. By the fourth night, someone had noticed. My equipment was moved. A coffee cup appeared on my desk warm. It wasn't mine. That's when I found the message. Scribbled on a torn printout, taped to the server rack: "You shouldn't have come back." The handwriting was his. I didn't panic. I couldn't afford to. I simply smiled, a small, brittle thing, and slid the note into my pocket. The silence between us had lasted 10 years. Now, it was speaking again. In those weeks, I changed everything about myself. A new haircut. A subtle accent I'd practiced until it sounded natural. I re-entered his world not as Clara Avery, the voiceless researcher, but as Claire Nolan, data consultant. Daniel's company, Mercer Biosystems, was expanding fast. They needed contractors. My application passed unnoticed except by one person, his new protege, Emily Ross. She reminded me of myself a decade ago, brilliant, naive, eager to please. And I knew what Daniel did to people like her. So I watched quietly, closely. During my first meeting, Daniel didn't recognize me. He shook my hand, that same performative warmth in his smile. Claire, right? Welcome aboard, I smiled back. Thank you, Drive. Mercer. I've heard so much about you, he laughed. Good things, I hope, stories, I said softly. Old ones, he didn't flinch. But I saw something flicker in his eyes, curiosity, maybe. Or unease. Every evening, I studied him from across the room. The way he adjusted his cufflinks before lying. The way he praised Emily just a little too publicly. He hadn't changed, he'd only grown more dangerous. The more I observed, the clearer my path became. Revenge wasn't about rage, it was about rhythm. Precision. And then came the point of no return. I found Emily crying in the lab one night, staring at her computer screen. When I asked what happened, she whispered, he's taking credit for my work. He said I should be grateful. The words hit me like a blade I'd already felt. That night, I made my first move. I copied the project files onto a secure drive and whispered to myself in the dark, he won't ruin her like he ruined me. I looked at the tarnished key again, the symbol of everything he stole. It felt heavier now, as if aware of what I was about to do. For 10 years, I'd survived by staying invisible. Now, invisibility would be my weapon. The next morning, Daniel received an anonymous email with a single attachment, his own handwriting from 10 years ago. Daniel's reply came faster than I expected. A single line, who is this? No greeting. No denial. Just fear, thinly veiled as curiosity. I didn't respond. I wanted him to stew in it, to feel the silence he'd given me. By the third day, I saw it working. The man who once stood unshakable in boardrooms now checked over his shoulder between meetings. His smile slipped at odd moments, like his mask had grown heavy. But beneath the cracks, something darker waited. While combing through archived emails on the internal server, I found a locked folder titled Eclipse. The encryption was old, but the naming convention. Mine's a habit from my university days. When I broke in, my stomach twisted. Inside were early design drafts of Lyra, written in my original coding syntax except for one addition. A hidden module. Something Daniel had added after stealing my work. The code was wrong. It wasn't just predictive AI anymore, it was manipulative. A behavioral influence algorithm disguised as healthcare analytics. It could nudge patient outcomes by altering data interpretation, making test results lean towards certain treatments Daniel's company conveniently manufactured. He wasn't saving lives. He was monetizing them. And suddenly, my revenge felt too small. I stared at the glowing monitor, the hum of the server filling the room like a heartbeat. My reflection in the glass looked pale, haunted but alive. For 10 years, he'd taken everything from me. But this was proof he'd taken more from the world. I printed a few pages, careful to leave no trace. When the printer light blinked red, I froze. A soft knock at the door. Emily's voice, Claire? You're still here? I slipped the papers into my folder. Just finishing some data checks, she lingered. Daniel wants to meet with you tomorrow. Private briefing. I smiled faintly. Of course he does. When she left, I touched the key around my neck. It now hung on a thin black cord. My lifeline, my reminder. That night, I wrote 3 words in my notebook: he profits from pain, and below it, make him confess. But how do you make a man who's built his life on lies tell the truth? You give him an audience. That became my new plan. Not to destroy his reputation, to make him destroy it himself. 3 days later, I walked into his office. Glass walls, panoramic view, trophies gleaming behind him. He smiled when I entered. Claire, have a seat. I've been hearing good things about you. His voice was smooth as ever. I wondered how many lies those lips had told. I'm honored, I said quietly, watching him tap his pen always twice before he lied. I wanted to discuss your recent progress, he continued. You're talented. Reminds me of someone I used to know, Clara Avery. He froze. Just for a breath. I haven't heard that name in years, he said finally. Tragic, really. She couldn't handle the pressure. I let silence stretch between us. Then, softly, you knew her well, he smiled. I made her career. And there it was, the arrogance that would bury him. As I stood to leave, I placed a small flash drive on his desk. Something for you, I said. What is it? Proof, I whispered. That silence doesn't mean surrender. His eyes flickered down to the drive, but when he looked up, I was already gone. He didn't know it yet, but that drive contained a corrupted version of the Eclipse file coded to lead him straight into his own trap. He'd open it out of fear. And when he did, every secret he'd buried would start to unearth itself. At midnight, his email server pinged 5,000 internal recipients. One message from Daniel Mercer and the attachments? Every file from Eclipse, the chaos began at dawn. By the time I reached the office, the entire building buzzed like a disturbed hive. People whispered in corners. Phones rang non-stop. And Daniel looked like a man who'd finally seen his reflection. He stormed past me, eyes wild, shut down all outbound servers. Now, but it was too late. The leak had already gone viral inside the company. Employees had seen the Eclipse data. They knew the truth. Mercer Biosystems wasn't saving patients, it was manipulating them. I walked through the glass halls slowly, silently, like a spectator at his execution. Still, there was one flaw in my plan. The leaked files traced back to Daniel's account, but not conclusively. He could still spin it, blame a hacker, a rogue employee. He needed to be cornered. And that's when I realized the real trap wasn't digital. It was emotional. That evening, I found Emily crying again, this time with security men taking her badge. Daniel had scapegoated her exactly as he'd done to me. History repeating itself, my rage turned surgical. I met her outside the building and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, I signed with my hands. Is the proof you need? She frowned. You know sign language? I nodded. I had a lot of time to learn. Inside the envelope was the real Eclipse data and the access logs showing Daniel's authorship. I knew what she'd do. She'd go to the press, to the board, to the world, and Daniel would think it was an accident. But before that, I had one last thing to finish. That night, I entered his office again. It was empty except for the faint smell of whiskey and ego. I placed the key on his desk, my final signature. The same key he'd given me years ago, engraved with our lab initials. The one he thought I'd lost the day he fired me. Beside it, I left a note written in his own style. Every system echoes its creator. Then I walked out for the last time. Or so I thought. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A known number. I answered without a word. A man's voice, hoarse, broken. Clara, it was you. He sounded less like a villain and more like a man who finally realized the truth had teeth. Why, he asked. After all this time, I whispered, because silence listens longer than guilt. He didn't reply. Only the faint sound of glass shattering through the line. When the news broke the next morning, CEO under investigation, whistleblower exposes unethical trials, I felt nothing. No joy. No peace. Just quiet. The silence was back. But now, it was mine. I looked at my reflection in the window. The sun was rising behind me, pale and cold. Then I noticed the missing detail. The key ID left on his desk wasn't there when the police arrived. He'd taken it. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something worse. 3 days later, I received a package. Inside was the tarnished key and a note written in my handwriting. The package sat on my kitchen table for hours before I touched it. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in neat cursive. When I finally opened it, the smell of old metal hit me first. The key wrapped in white paper. Beneath it a note. You forgot something, D. My hands trembled. It wasn't fear. It was the realization that the game wasn't over. Daniel wasn't destroyed, he was adapting. Outside, the morning news flashed across the TV. His face filled the screen. Mercer CEO resigns amidst scandal. He looked smaller. Paler. But alive. He'd survived worse headlines before. He knew how to pivot. And if he still had the key, he still had a hold over me. That's when I made the call I'd been dreading. To the journalist Emily had contacted Riley Shaw. He met me in a coffee shop, all curiosity and caffeine breath. You're the ghost in this story, aren't you? He said. I nodded slightly. My voice came low but firm. I want him finished. Riley leaned forward. Finished as in the world sees what he's done. All of it, he smirked. That's already happening. But you've got more, don't you? I slid a small envelope across the table. Inside, proof of Daniel's offshore accounts tied to falsified medical trials. Evidence I'd quietly collected for years. Riley whistled. This could bury him. It will, I said softly. As he left, I caught my reflection in the window. My eyes looked calm. That scared me. That night, the story broke online. Mercer funded experimental trials under false data. Comments flooded in. Former employees spoke up. Investors fled. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt cold. Emily texted me, he's ruined. Thank you, but I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the sound of his voice on that call. The way he'd said my name like a question, not an accusation. By dawn, my phone buzzed again. Riley. You should see this, he said. A video had surfaced on Daniel's dormant company channel. The thumbnail froze on his face. The title, a confession. I pressed play. He sat in the same office where I'd left the key. His eyes were red, his voice trembling. This isn't about my company. It's about a woman named Clara Avery. I took her voice. I took her work. And she took my peace. He looked straight into the camera. If she's watching, I'm sorry. But you should know it wasn't just me. Then he lifted the key and placed it on the desk. The screen cut to black. I stared at the reflection of that small piece of metal, now on my table again. And the line that chilled me most wasn't his apology, it was his last sentence. It wasn't just me. That night, I broke into his house and found a second key taped beneath his desk. Daniel's house was a mausoleum of success trophies, awards, photos of handshakes and smiles. Everything perfectly staged, like a life curated for cameras. But his study was chaos. Papers scattered. Laptop open, camera light still blinking. He'd recorded that confession recently. And then I found it under the desk, taped carefully, a second key. Identical to mine, except for one engraving. The initials E. M's Emily Ross. The realization hit like ice in my lungs. He hadn't just used me or Emily, there was an entire network. A machine that harvested ideas, identities, lives. And Emily, she wasn't just another victim. She was part of it. I opened the hidden drawer beneath his desk. Inside, files, contracts, NDA letters, digital ledgers. Emily's signature was on half of them's payments. Transfers. Silence bought and sold. I staggered back, bile rising. She'd played both sides. When I confronted her the next day, she didn't even flinch. "You think I didn't know," she said. "He promised me power. You wanted justice, I wanted survival. You helped him destroy people," I whispered. She crossed her arms. "And now you're helping destroy him. Don't act pure, Clara." For a moment, I saw myself in her. Different motives, same darkness. The moral line I thought I'd been walking. It had vanished. Later that week, Daniel vanished too. The police called it self-imposed exile, but his accounts were drained. His confession had gone viral. Riley's articles spread everywhere, painting me as the anonymous whistleblower. But every headline about him was followed by speculation about me. The ghost of Lyra, they called me. People loved the story. And I hated that. Because revenge isn't clean. It leaves fingerprints on the soul. I couldn't stop replaying Daniel's final words. It wasn't just me. If Emily was part of it, who else had been? I started tracing the network he'd left behind. Offshore subsidiaries. Shell accounts. One company name kept reappearing, Virix Technologies. A silent partner in all his ventures. I followed the trail. Every document, every hidden signature. Until the final file opened. And the name at the bottom turned my blood to glass. Riley Shaw. The journalist. The man who'd helped me expose everything. The stories. The leaks. The timing. All orchestrated. I wasn't dismantling Daniel's empire. I was building Riley's. And that's when I understood what Daniel meant. It wasn't just him. The next morning, Riley called me. His first words? "You've done beautifully, Clara. Now let's finish it." Riley's voice oozed calm. "You didn't think I published those stories out of charity, did you?" I didn't answer. Daniel's fall created a vacuum, he continued. "Someone had to fill it. And you, Claire, you gave me the weapon." My stomach twisted. "You used me," he laughed. "No, you used yourself." I just held the mirror. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat, the same familiar paralysis from years ago. The silence was back, coiling tight around me. He must have heard it. "Still can't find your voice when it matters, huh?" Something inside me snapped. "You think I won't?" "Please," he said. "You don't have the stomach for real vengeance." He hung up. For hours, I sat staring at the two keys on my desk, mine and Daniel's duplicate. The symbols of everything lost and everything taken. Then an idea took form. Not revenge. Not justice. Something colder. I created a new algorithm, a ghost version of Lyra. One that didn't predict behavior but exposed it. It crawled through Riley's system silently, harvesting his communications, tracking payments, piecing together his manipulations. Every secret he'd buried began surfacing. 3 days later, Riley hosted a live interview, boasting about ethical journalism and truth-telling. Halfway through, the broadcast glitched. His own emails flashed on screen: blackmail, payoffs, exploitation. The audience gasped. His career ended in 20 seconds of raw exposure. But it didn't feel like victory. Because watching him crumble, I saw Daniel's face. My face. I'd become the architect of silence again. The police reopened Daniel's case soon after, suicide by overdose. Emily vanished abroad. Riley's reputation was in ashes. And I was left with 2 keys, 2 ghosts, and 1 truth too heavy to carry. That night, I returned to the lab, the place where it all began. I unlocked the door one final time. The servers were gone, the room hollow. I placed both keys on the floor and whispered, "No more doors," and for the first time in years, my voice didn't shake. When I turned to leave, the security monitor flickered on and Daniel's recorded face appeared again, whispering, "You learned well." For weeks, I couldn't shake his final words. "You learned well." They played in my dreams, in the hum of traffic, in every quiet room. He was right. I had learned to well. I'd learned how to manipulate, to deceive, to destroy with precision. I'd built my revenge like a machine and it kept running, even after the targets were gone. Riley was gone. Emily vanished. Daniel was dead, and me? I was still here. The last ghost standing. People online called me a hero. Whistleblower.survivor. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew what I'd become to get here. One night, I revisited Daniel's confession video. I noticed something new. In the background, barely visible, a photo frame reflected light. I zoomed in. It wasn't his office. It was mine. My old lab. He'd recorded it there, knowing I'd see. Knowing it would haunt me. And beneath his words, I could hear it now, the faint hum of the servers I thought I'd destroyed. Lyra was still alive. Somewhere, someone had rebuilt it. Maybe Emily. Maybe someone else. Maybe me. Because when I checked my own laptop, there it was, an auto-generated folder titled Lyra Restore, dated 2 days ago. I didn't remember creating it. But it was my code. My syntax. My ghost. Revenge had replicated itself. I stared at the screen, listening to the faint ticking of the wall clock, the only sound in the room. For 10 years, I'd lived without a voice. Then I used it to tear down the world that stole it. Now, there was nothing left to say. I unplugged the computer, the hum fading into silence. The same silence I once feared. Except now, it wasn't empty. It was honest. I walked to the window, sunrise spilling gold across the skyline. The world below moved on, unaware. And in that stillness, I whispered one last sentence, soft, steady, certain. He took my voice. I gave the silence back. The sound barely escaped my lips, but I heard it. Clear and final. I picked up the two keys from my desk and dropped them into the river at dawn. They sank quickly, vanishing into ripples of light, and just like that, everything Daniel Mercer built and everything I became disappeared with them. The world didn't end with an explosion. It ended with silence, and this time, it was mine.